Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey, everyone. Highly uncircumcised, Nicole Jurgens, Michael Moore, back at it, raw, uncut, in your face, deal with it.
Okay, oh my God, that's a lot. Okay.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. I'm doing really good.
Well, that leads right into the topic that I had for today.
Okay, I'm lying. I'm lying. I'm not doing really good.
Thanks for that perfect segue, Nicole Jurgens. No, you know what? I have been giving a lot of thought to depression, which is a serious subject that we're going to discuss in this particular podcast. Just our
Yeah,
thoughts on it, so forth.
I think it's a good discussion because, yes, okay, you start.
So, you know what actually had me thinking about depression? I was thinking about when I would come play at the bike with you, especially in those earlier years, and you would always greet me with "Hey, sunshine," and I would just be like, it would always tickle me inside because I'd be thinking, if she only knew like how ready I was to just, murder everybody in here, even though you know how I feel about guns. Uh, I was just thinking how good we are at hiding like how we feel, right? Like people always ask you. I mean, it's the second thing that comes up, right? Like, hey, Nicole, how are you? It's always the second point that people make upon greeting each other. And I don't think most people really actually care how you're doing.
Oh my God, that's a good point. I want to say something about that because just like we said, we hate the question, what do you do? I also hate the question, how are you? Not
Me
because it's a
too.
bad question, because we don't really care. It's just like, oh, like you could just say like, oh, the sky is blue. Like why say how are you if you're not truly invested in how the person is? Because we're not. Like nobody ever says, oh, I'm feeling really bad. Or if they do actually be honest, does the other person like, can they handle it? They're like, oh God, I didn't really want to know that. So like, why do we do
Right.
that?
So interestingly enough, like last week, and obviously no specifics given, but like, I because I know you and I love you and we're such good friends, like I could just sense that you weren't feeling the greatest or whatever. And I said, how are you? And you were like, oh, I'm fine, I'm good, like you always would. And then I was like, no, how are you? And your whole countenance just changed because at that moment it was like, okay, I can tell my friend how I'm feeling for real, right? And wouldn't that just be so nice if we actually like, did that for one another on a regular basis? Um, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say yes. Number one, it would be so nice, and number two, I think that's a matter of connection, of really truly being connected to people. And I think especially this last year, but overall, we've become more and more disconnected from people. And
Yeah,
what we
for
really
sure.
need is that connection, so that when we ask this question, we can really sit and I used to think this sounded so like bougie, like, oh, hold space for something. Like that sounds so stupid. Oh, woo woo, hold space. But I actually understand it now. Like really hold space for them to tell you how they are, to really let you know, and you hold space for them. That means that this is hard too for me, is that I say you're a ray of sunshine because you are, but then also what happens is when you become not the ray of sunshine, like all of a sudden I feel like I'm dying too, like hold space for someone means to be able to feel them and allow them to feel their feelings without like fucking spiraling down with them, right? So there's a couple of levels there, but I think it comes back to connection. We need that connection, but that's a side point anyway. Sorry, go back to depressed.
Yes, I fully agree with you. But there's so many ways to sort of come at the thought of depression. And if I talk to someone about depression, I feel like I want to sort of end that conversation with something that's actually going to be like positive or hopefully nurturing to the person, encouraging to the person. And just as a side note, one thing I've realized about myself, and it's I guess taken over 40 years to realize this, is that I do a lot of protecting Michael. I do a lot of like, here's the veneer. A lot of people that really know me know that I'm like, try and be funny a lot. And I love to make people laugh and I love to make people feel better. But a lot of times, what is that? It's like the sad clown. Is that what that is?
So
What
that's
is
the Joker.
yeah.
That's what's his name? The most recent Joker.
Yeah,
Joaquin
yeah, Joaquin
Phoenix.
Phoenix. Oh, that was a
Yeah.
haunting performance.
Yeah.
But anyway, I I kind of want to talk about like, how do you handle depression if you've ever actually dealt with it? I'm going to let you talk about that. I'm certainly not going to offer anything.
You want me to answer it now, or do you want to go to
Yes,
B? You
please,
said
please,
okay.
please.
So well, I think this is a really good topic because number one, nobody wants to admit that they're depressed. I don't think, like nobody wants to be like, oh, I'm so depressed. Like, or we say it like that, like, oh, I'm so depressed, but not really with any mode of like understanding what we're going through or how to turn it around, right? How to deal with it, I guess, is like how the tools and resources that we need to live in that space. And we've talked about this before, is like we're emotionally immature still. I think, we're evolving as a race, but all of us isn't evolving. Like we have, I think of it like this: we have like a mind and a body and a spirit, or mind, body, and soul, right? Okay. And we have a world in which we have almost endless possibility. And as Americans, we have the freedom to say that, right? Like we literally live in a country with like endless possibility. And yet we are in this country higher and higher rates of depression, obesity, unhealthiness, like, and it doesn't add up. We're like, what the hell is happening? And I think the thing is, our world is evolving. We are evolving as like a body, as is great, but our emotional, our mind and our soul is not evolving with us, not as fast. We're getting there. I think we're working on it now. And I say that because we haven't been given the tools to work with. Like I say, we talked about education, and I think, and we say, oh, well, education is just a place to teach kids how to, what do you want to do when you grow up, and then teach them how to get that job. But now that we're in a different world where, it's, who knows what they're going to be doing 20 years from now, right? It's not the same kind of work world, industrial world that we had in the past. And now, and we're in a world where you don't need a textbook to learn anything. You can freaking Google anything and learn it in 1 second. And now that we're in a world where we understand, well, like memorization and learning things aren't really the same thing, maybe the educational model has to adjust, and as parents, we have to adjust to start understanding our like emotional IQ. There's a whole book written about emotional IQ, and upgrading our thought processes in our mind and to help us deal with this, because I think we're kind of on a cusp of like in between. We're in between. We're in the like the generation that's just starting to understand we have these issues, right? Like before, people would be depressed, but then you're just like, oh yeah, you're just depressed. No, now we're like depressed and we understand we're depressed and we're starting to think about what we're going to do about it, right? We're in the first generation where we're understanding that it's not going to be like an industrial world in 20 years, right? Like we're in this generation, I think you and I specifically, this age, where we saw life very differently up to this point than it's going to be going forward. Whereas, some people, I guess it happens for anybody. You live 100 years, you're going to see very different life. But maybe when you get to this point, you realize it, Go ahead.
So, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. No, you go
Um,
ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I've had a thought for many, many, many years that I've probably only shared with a couple people. And I'm pretty sure you're not one of them. I have always felt, not always, I have felt in the last 15 or 20 years of my adulthood that people are pretty much just 7 and 8-year-olds trying to pretend to be something else.
Mentally, right?
Mentally. And I
We have
say that
not
to
evolved
say,
that part.
right. And you made me think about that thought of mine with just how you described the evolution of human emotion and psyche and so forth. I think we all do a lot of pretending, for sure. Pretending to have things in control, pretending to have more than we have in terms of physical stuff, assets, money, homes, cars, da 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 da. we all basically have sort of been bullied by social media. I think social media causes a ton of depression in society. I think that, and I've seen studies on this, by the way, so this is not just my original thought, but I've seen studies where it shows that people who spend X amount of time on social media daily have a much higher proclivity to be depressed or flirt with depression, because most things that people put on social media are things to sort of aggrandize their life. And, this is where I'm going. Look at me in Tahiti on the beach. And, here's me at my job, having lunch, and all the great stuff that you might have. You might have kids, and someone looking at that might be having trouble having kids or something like that. Or you may be married and look like you have a perfect marriage. And then, the person looking at it is thinking, why can't I meet the right person, and so forth. Or it could be someone married looking at single people saying, damn, I missed out on a whole lot of, fun, when maybe the people who are actually having fun are just, again, pretending that they're having fun. So anyway, the long and the short of it is, like, we do a lot of comparisons and contrasts with other people. And I think all of that leads to being depressed.
Yeah, I mean, for sure it does. And also, I think that all of that, I don't know if social media caused that. I'm sure all of that was there before. Maybe, again, it just brings more of it to light. But I think that's what I'm talking about when, we need to find, and we're working towards it. You can see we are working towards it, but we need to find a way to evolve our mind and our soul at the rate that the world and our bodies have evolved. There needs to be, like, the tools and the resources, like therapy, like, is a huge thing. Like, now I've never heard one person talk bad about therapy, saying like, oh God, it's terrible. I didn't learn. Everyone says like, oh my God, it's life-changing. I don't know why I didn't do it earlier. Because what the therapist does is ask the questions to get yourself thinking about how, right, how to live without comparison, how to, like, who do you want to be? Who do you like? How do you want to live? And I don't, again, while I don't think it's social media, I think it's just the way we've grown, is that, since we're little, it's like you go to school and they tell you to do this, and then you got to do this path, and then you got to go here, and then you got to go here. And then if you're never evaluating exactly what you want, like in here, you get stuck in all of that. And I use the word stuck a lot and in my life, because I've been through many periods of it. But I don't also think that my word for stuck, it can end up being depression. Basically, it's basically where I'm stuck in my mind, just reeling about, well, what do I want, and how am I going to get it, and why am I not there now? And like, and it's all here, right? It's all that comparison, all of that depression, everything is here. We've built this suffering in our own mind. When you look around, you're like, we have these amazing bodies that we're healthy. Well, if you're in the 50% that are healthy in the US, we have endless possibility. What is going on? And that's the issue. And I think we are starting to, like meditation and yoga and these things are starting to take hold. We just need to, the way originally it started is, talking about, like, yoga was like yogis, and like, I can't identify with that. There has to be more from a young age of understanding, number one, like our emotions and our feelings. Number two, not only understanding them, but knowing that it's okay to feel them. I think especially we've done men a huge disservice, right? From your little, don't cry, be a man, don't, right? Like, even at least little girls, they cry, they call them a girl, but at least you can cry, you can feel your feelings, but you made fun of for it. But little boys can't even feel feelings, and that's changing. That is
So
changing. Yeah.
can I stop you right there? Because I don't want to forget what I'm about to say, because I think
Yeah.
it's hopefully important to a group of people. So especially as Black men and women, but specifically men, we utilize therapy the least among any group of people. Uh, I used to think that I was a very sort of expressive, communicative kind of person. Like, I thought that I talked about the things that I wanted to talk about. But I realized in going to therapy, because I've been to therapy, and I'm proud of that. Like, hopefully that stigma about going to therapy
Yeah, that has to
is
change.
diminishing.
Yeah.
But I realized in going to therapy, and after the therapist, was like, "Hi, how are you?" kind of thing, and then started really delving into like why I was there and all that, and I just, oh, I didn't even. she was like, "How are you?" And I was like, I probably ugly cried for like 10 minutes, but
She's like, nice
at
to
that
meet
time in
you.
my life, and yeah, at that time in my life, I considered it to be the worst time in my life. I mean, I had lost a job. I had trouble paying my mortgage at that time. My wife was pregnant with our third baby, and she wasn't like a planned pregnancy or anything like that. So it just felt like the entire world was collapsing in, and I didn't realize how much pressure I had on me and how much pressure I placed on me as especially as a man, and again as a black man in this society, to take care of the wife, take care of the kids, take care of the home. And I just remember my wife just being like, why don't you talk to somebody? Because she could see, like, I mean, literally, I felt like every time she would open her mouth and say something to me, like I would just snap, and I wouldn't even know why. And I think at that time we must have been in like our eighth or ninth year of marriage, and now we're going on 20. So that was a while back. But she would just be like, "Why don't you talk to somebody?" And I would just always be like, "I'm not talking to anybody. Like, I'm not what? Like, I'm therapy. I don't do therapy. Like, I'll do couples therapy because you want to do it, but I'm not just gonna go sit by myself." And I got to tell you, when I finally broke down and went and saw a therapist, oh my goodness, like it was one of the greatest experiences ever. Now when my wife is like, "Hey, do you want to go do couples counseling and all that kind of stuff?" Because we'll just do that kind of stuff, by the way, not because anything is wrong, but like it'll be 5 years, it'll be 4 years, and she'll be like, we kind of got to let's tweak it, let's
I
make
think
sure
that's great. I think that's
yeah.
that's what, when we were saying, like, we're starting to understand that depression is depression is a state of mind. It's oh, someone's
I
gonna
think
be,
sometimes it's physiological, though. I
for
think it can
sure. I
definitely
was just
be
gonna say,
mental.
I don't want to say that for everybody. I'm
Yeah,
for sure, people there are to the extents where they need medication or whatever, but um
because a lot of
depression,
times people don't even know. Well, most of the times we don't necessarily know why we're depressed. We kind of
yes,
think we know, but there are a lot of cases where people literally just wake up in the morning and they don't know why they want
yeah,
to end their lives, right?
yeah,
So we have to have like
there's
empathy for
definitely
those.
levels. Yes, no, I
Yeah.
don't know, I nothing negative about anybody, but the levels of experience is like, number one, understand that we all go through some level at some time, probably a lot throughout our life. And number two, understanding that there are tools and reason we have to start taking them. And not only, like, if we talk about society and what we mandate as society is make that more generally universal, make it more like, if we're going to talk about health of a society, let's talk, we need mental and emotional health. It's just kind of been not even addressed barely yet. I think Oprah is just coming out with something right now, whether it's a book or a documentary about, specifically about mental health.
It's actually an ongoing series that she
Yeah,
has.
I think that's the thing, is that now we're starting to understanding, like you said, oh, everybody, like, on social, and social media is like, I would say I don't even have a problem with depression from social media, because I just don't care. I don't look at it. I think people are stupid when I look at it, and I see their comments. I'm like, these are the people I live with in society. Like, I want to kill everybody.
But
Not really, but like,
you're very different than the
but
average bear.
yeah, I think it's important. I think, like you said, in therapy and ongoing therapy. I have another friend, male friend, my only other really good male friend, who started therapy when he got married, but individual. They do marriage and individual, and he's like, it's the best thing ever. And these are the kind of tools and understanding, like, that we should do. We should all do this, right? To like get through. If nothing else, at least gets us to reconnect with us ourselves, right? Because I just talked about this on my other podcast. It's just like, I think along the way, like, we grow up, like I said, I think it happens long before social media. I think from the minute you're a child, you don't know anything about the world. So everyone tells you what to do, how to behave, how to believe, listen to the rules, do it right. And so you do it and you do it. And so you see the world how you're told to see the world. How else would you, right? Because you're constantly being bombarded with all the information from your school, from your family, from your society, from everything, right? Constant rules and this and that, like, and then you go to school, and then maybe you go to college, and then maybe you get a job, and then you get or like, right, but you're doing all the things you're supposed to do, and you forget to, like, okay, but here, like, number one, we're never even told to be like, here, like, what's in here, because I really truly believe we're all born with our own purpose, as our own being. Like, we give ourselves an identity, we tell ourselves a story of who we are, that's our ego trying to give ourselves an identity, but there's a person in here of who we really are. And
We all
when
have a purpose, kind of like the destiny.
no, a purpose, like, you can
Oh,
you can decide, but you have to know yourself, right? Not
oh,
who you
oh,
think
oh.
you are, not and the problem is when we become disconnected with ourselves, that's when we get depressed. How is when I've, like, been depressed or stuck in my life, is just I've stopped listening to myself. I've stopped caring. I just, like, I'm on the hamster wheel of life, and I'm doing the things, and, like, maybe it's great for a while, but it starts to feel off. Like for years before the pandemic, I wanted to do something else in life. But but this is a good job, and I'm supporting my family, and blah, blah, blah. But you let it go on long enough, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what? And then you can't get out of bed, and you can't, and I don't want to get out of bed. And then the thoughts in your mind are like, but my life is fine. Why am I, and then it just spirals, and it just constantly spirals. So yeah, understanding, like, we need more tools to grasp, like, our emotions and our feelings and how to feel. I know personally, like, I want so bad to be, like, much more patient with myself. Like, I get so annoyed when I'm not doing exactly what I think I need to be doing in every moment. And what does that even mean? Like, what I need to be doing? Who said, like, so yeah, this is a very good topic. I'd love for, like, somebody who understands depression to tell us how do you fix it? Somebody fix me.
Well, I'll I'll tell you what.
Tell me
I re-
something.
I remember a time when you were going through some stuff, doesn't have to be talked about, and I was like, just in your corner, and trying to be super friend and all that. And I can remember us having dinner and talking, and I was just doing my just level best to, like, encourage you and love you, and it's all gonna be great. And you kind of looked at me and you were like, man, this shit is gonna be over one day. It's all good. And I was just like, dang, I wish I could do that. Like, it turned into my therapy session. I was like, how do you do that? You just tell yourself shit's gonna be over? Like, what?
I am
Then
a
I got depressed. I was like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. I'm doing it all wrong. This lady just looked at me and told me shit's gonna get better. Oh, okay. All right. I thought life was good for me at that point, by the way, too. And I was just like, oh, I need to reevaluate myself.
I am a walking contradiction. That's the story I tell myself, like, all the time, like,
You literally were
all
like,
the time.
you were like kind of crying, kind of teared up, and we were talking, and then you were just like, man, shit is gonna get. I was like, yo, either Nichoel is a full-on, like, multiple personality disordered individual, or this chick is just the toughest thing I've seen since Steel. Goodness gracious.
Well, and that's the funny thing about it too, is, like, if I listen to anybody else, I am very strong, I'm very powerful, I know what I want, and I go after and I get it. But I think where my depression comes in is when I run up against that, where I feel the opposite of all of that, right? But we can, and that's okay. Like, I don't have to be strong all the time. I don't have to know what I want every minute. I don't have to even be doing what I'm supposed to be doing every minute.
I'm
Like,
pretty much sure I told you that as
when
well,
you
by the
run
way.
up against it, then that's all of a sudden where it's like, oh my God, and I don't want to get out of bed now. I just want to lay in my bed and I play Clash Royale for 8 hours on my phone. Like, that's what I'm going to do today.
Oh, me, I probably, like, go get the worst food ever if I'm feeling like that funk. But anyway, yeah, I think that was a good little dive into
Yeah,
the
I think
topic of depression.
we can dive a lot more into it later, and we probably will. Like, I want to start, like, reading. Maybe we need to, like, I personally am huge into personal development books, especially as I'm moving into the, like, the life and business coaching arena, like I'm constantly assessing. I mean, that's another thing about it is like you say, comparisons will make you depressed, but also we make ourselves depressed. Like I ask myself, like, who am I to be a life and business coach? You tell yourself like, oh, you can't do this. You can't, it's in our mind. Like who says you can't? Like, why can't you? Like, how do you do something if you always tell yourself you can't, And so I've always my whole life been really big into personal development books, but maybe we should read some and go over them if you'll ever read a book.
You know what? You have one of my books, and I
You
should have
didn't
gotten my
read
book
it.
when I
You did
came
not
out.
read it. You did
You
not
know
read
why I
it.
didn't read it? Because you asked to borrow it,
A year
and I
after
gave
you
it to you.
got it.
Yeah, but that's about the time when the book is nice and warmed up and you get ready to read it.
You have to, like, I think that's another thing probably about depression is like we have to, like we said, understand the tools and resources we have available, but we have to read, we have to write. Like I think that's what school was about, but the subject matter is shifting, and I think they're behind in that, and so we can't reform an entire educational system, but I would like to. I really would.
Well, I think we could. I think we could very easily, but that's definitely a whole nother podcast. But school is definitely not designed to bring out who you really are. It's
But it
just
should.
designed to bring out,
Yeah.
what you want to do for a living.
If you know who you are, what you want to do just comes easy, and people will disagree with me, but I would say if you think that's false, you probably just don't know who you are.
Yeah,
Who you
but you're Nicole Jergens, so your thoughts on most of this stuff is kind of like,
I know people are not gonna. I know people are not gonna. They're gonna be like, Michael, you're so great, but that Nicole, oh, she's way out there. Like,
hey,
way.
Nicole, have you ever felt like you're out in the middle of the ocean?
It's
Just
6 feet and like it's only 6 feet of water, but you're drowning. Like you just can't, like, I do that
I
sometimes.
swear, talking to you for a couple hours, every day is kind of like, I feel like I honestly just like worked out. I'm just like, oh my God, did I keep up? I just wake up and I'm like, is it over? Yeah. I see
You're
that look,
welcome.
by the way.
You're welcome.
Actually, you're welcome, because I think I keep you from actually levitating and floating out into space. So you're welcome.
Oh, because I want to stay here, the land of not the free.
Yeah, you don't want to just orbit Earth.
No.
You know, that's no good. That's no good.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think this is a good discussion. I think we'll have it again, but I think maybe it's just the question that we can pose of people is like, how can you support your mental health, right? Like, how can you support and I think it's more than just mental. I think we're starting to focus on the mental, but I think it's also our soul. And I think our soul is where it's like purpose driven and who we are. And, the mind is where we get stuck and where we get depressed, but our soul is like understanding the person we are and living it. And I think, the disconnections are coming, with all of that.
Well, that definitely is where you and I would kind of deviate, of course, when we talk about the soul or spirit.
Oh my
side
God, we
of
got to have
things.
another one. We can't do it right now. It's too
Yeah,
long.
just because I'm right and you're wrong, so it's kind of difficult. But anyway, this has been another highly uncircumcised conversation. I appreciate you for, just entertaining my, lack of intelligence on most of these issues. And we know that you just,
Are you talking to me or are you talking to the viewers?
Oh, no, there was somebody on the other side of the laptop.
Oh my God. All right. All right. We'll say say goodbye. Say goodbye, Michael.
Goodbye, my lovely viewers and listeners and all the people that support Highly Uncircumcised.
We love you.
Sort of, kind of.